Welcome to this episode of BCStrategies Industry Buzz. I'm very happy today to have Anthony Bartolo, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Bandwidth with us. And of course, everybody is gearing up for Enterprise Connect, which I know Bandwidth will be at. But we thought we would introduce Anthony to all of you and ask a few questions. And to get us going, why don't I turn it over to BCStrategies expert and founder, Jim Burton.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kevin. You know, Anthony, I have been following your career for a very, very long time. You've got such an unusual background. I should say unusual, but a very interesting background. You have a lot of stuff to do with mobility, a couple of tenures at Avaya, giving you that background, and then of course Tata Communications, which is got a lot of different components to that as well. And so as you move to Bandwidth, I know that you started developing a strategy of what you thought Bandwidth could do and should do and redirect that company. So give us a little bit of insight as to some of the changes in strategy that you've changed since you joined Bandwidth.
Well, sure. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the intro, and pleasure to be here. It's been a wonderful ride at Bandwidth. I've been here a little over 2 years. It's a very agile company, and that's allowed me to put a few tweaks around the edges to really sort of get some of the results that we've recently attained. If anyone's following the stock recently at earnings, we spent a lot of time really defining our three offers. We've got three main offers that are go-to-market offers, and we really just sort of tweak those around and focus the company in making sure that we solve for our traditional set of customers on the global communications plan business, and that is our traditional business. That's where we powered the major hyperscalers who took on CPaaS early and allowed them to build their mega platforms on top of our platforms to serve their end customers. And it's probably a slide or two after this. I know you've got a little bit of this is the slide, and that part of the portfolio we basically that was quite shored up and simplified. Then we added and really doubled down on the offers around our programmable services offers. That's really around our messaging platform and messaging portfolio. We serve effectively a series of messaging companies around the world. It is growing very, very fast now, and it is really the players in the industry that you may not be familiar with the names, but you're familiar with their customers. They are the tens of thousands of brands that represent what you eat, what you wear, what you drive, what you fly, and what you play each and every day. So that's an area that we've sort of put an offer together around. And then there was a focus on enterprise solutions, the Fortune 2000s, what they're looking at, what they're focused on. They're starting to behave just like our traditional business original customers, which were the large customers and the hyperscalers. Well, the Fortune 2000s are behaving the same way they are, except they're doing it a few years later. And we're opening up. They allowed us to open up that part of our business. And then as a result of doing those things, we basically increased our total addressable market from $3 billion to $12 billion in 2021, 2022 to now $17 billion. So that gave us a great opportunity to focus. That's what that focus allowed us to do. And then I spent a lot of time focusing on the integration. I made an integration of Voxbone a few years back, and finishing off that integration and finishing that off technically. And when you do that, you actually free up resources to do additional development, and that unlocked that huge development potential. We focused on our go-to-market. The go-to-market that included focusing once you've got an offer around enterprise, you can take that product and offering to enterprise. And we also opened up our channel partners, which is a potential that is still in its infancy, but it's showing some really good signs for us. And the team executed really well. As a result of all those things, they responded well. The teams executed well. resulted. You could see that in our earnings quite recently. Our messaging business grew 31% in 2023. Our enterprise business grew 21%, and our EBITDA grew 39%. And we've got record free cash. And record free cash flow. So the team is pretty proud, and they're proud of themselves. But more importantly, our customers are super proud of themselves too, super happy too, because we saw our NPS scores increase to our record numbers. So, I think there's really good momentum there, and that's a function of focus. All of those things translate into focus. So.
Well, Anthony, I work with many of your customers, meaning the big providers, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Zoom. And one of the things that I found fascinating is I talked to them about projects that they're working on. Bandwidth is always their favorite partner. It is remarkable because these are tough people to do business with. They're very demanding and everything else. And they've got a lot of partners in your space. So how have you done that? How have you been able to position the company in a space that you become everybody's favorite partner?
I think that's a core competency of Bandwidth. I attribute that to David Morgan, the CEO. I think he built a fantastic culture, and culture is not, you can't just turn it on. It needs to be in the DNA. The DNA of the company is always customer first, always focus on the customer, always treat them as a trusted partner and element, an extension of your team. I think that is the one thing walking through the doors that I really appreciated. It allowed me to do a lot of some of these things that were really, they were not non-trivial, but to do so many of these non-trivial things in a short period of time takes a particular culture, and I applaud the team for that. That's resonated in the conversations with customers. When we have conversations with customers, when I'm a part of them, I can see it. It's this camaraderie. It's this natural camaraderie. They feel like we're easy to do business with. I mean, we work hard at being easy to do business with, but we're also in an environment where, if you think about, some of the alternatives are dealing with a carrier who is an incumbent, who is geographically restricted, who's in a regulated environment, and there's they don't really have a great track record of support, etc. So I think we have the advantage of coming from a different space and having a software orientation to us.
Great, thank you.
Well, so why don't we go over to you, Blair? I know you've got Bandwidth is going to be on one of the panels that you're participating in at Enterprise Connect. So what questions do you have for Anthony?
Yeah, so, one of my favorite topics is the integration of UC and CC, or, UCaaS and CCaaS. And in fact, I'm doing a panel on that at Enterprise Connect, and Lauren Brockman from Bandwidth is going to be on the panel. So I know you won an award last year for Maestro. So I'd like to hear more about Maestro and what you're doing to help the integration of unified communications and contact center.
Sure. If I may, I might want to start a little bit with the difference between a traditional carrier and a pure CPaaS. I think that sort of leads into that really well. I know I sent through a primer. I don't know if you may have that, but if you put it up on the screen, it really is why we exist, our raison d'etre. So traditionally, there are two ways for a customer to consume. Next slide, I think. Yeah, if you take a look at this slide, we show it as two different ways for a customer to consume their communications. They can either go to a pure play CPaaS provider on the right-hand side, or they can source it from a legacy network operator. And each technically has their limitations. So if you think about the CPaaS platform, what you'll find is they're very, very innovative. They're software oriented, but they have to rent their network versus owning it. And this means their customers tend to get limited control and limited scalability, and therefore they eventually outgrow them. And then also there's the issue of limited support, because usually when you find somebody anyway, when you actually get somebody at the end of the day, because they rent their network, they usually have to hand it off to another person anyway, because they rent that particular element. So therefore support's not a big reputation element in this particular area. On the other side, on the left-hand side, you've got the incumbents, right? These are known legacy carriers, names that you're pretty familiar with. They characteristically often lack a lot of integrations. They're slow to innovate, and they often provide somewhat of a disappointing support experience. So when someone wants to work with a traditional or legacy telco, you usually have to do it their way, and their way is obviously quite difficult. And when you want to do that on a global basis, because they're geographically restricted as a telco, they often operate in a particular geography. If you want to do something globally, you're going to have to replicate it multiple times. And when you do that, that's an incredibly complex, it's usually quite expensive, and it's a time-consuming proposition. What we have found is that the Fortune 2000 customers and the hyperscalers, well, we saw it with the hyperscalers, they needed the best of both worlds. This is where bandwidth sort of represented the best of both halves. What we saw is they wanted a global CPaaS that also owns its network, which is what we do, that allows you to deliver the connectivity and the security and the APIs, and being able to do that in a scalable way to consume business critical communication services. So that's basically what they were looking for us to do. And as a result of that, I think there's another slide after this, which could be useful. Is you'd basically find that the real differentiator between those two elements is the fact that you can combine those two things, which are unique already in industry, but then you had these insights that we could bring to the table which was a critical need for enterprises, which was the regulatory compliance component. So you've got regulatory insights that can assist customers as they navigate this global framework around the world and deal with integrations, because the first integrations enterprises find is trying to integrate into a country, trying to get a new carrier and integrate them. So what we've done is we've got this platform that allowed you to do that right off the bat. It had the ability to also build into it the insights around regulations that are either global regulations, national, local, industry compliance, and lots of layers of rules. And it's a challenge so complex that in a single year alone, last year, there were hundreds of these changes. And these new changes missing a single one of those could basically bring down one of your customers, bring down a whole country, or bring down your platform. So the stakes are relatively high. So what we do is we integrate those capabilities, those regulations into the platform. So when a customer comes to the platform, they tap into our expertise. Even better, we've made it so easy to consume. We do it through software, and if they choose, they can have a single partner as a result with global redundancy. And that's what makes the CPaaS solution or the bandwidth platform or communications platform something unique, because it's an owned and operated network. It's a software interface in that particular platform, and it's got all the regulations and regulatory elements that are built in, that expertise you can tap into. And that's a big differentiator for us. So then we took that and took it one step further, and that was on Maestro. So if you really think about Maestro, all of us have been in the industry for quite some time, right? And one thing, I've developed an adage over the years, which is the one thing you can be assured in this industry is death, taxes, and integrations. Integrations is something that has plagued the industry for a long time. If you really think about it, we've been whipsawed a little. Back in the 90s, when a CIO came along and brought their strategy to the table, you could bring it. I'm a vendor guy, and then I moved over to the carrier side, came back to the vendor, and now I'm back at the carrier. It's sort of a unique background. And what you see is that vendor side usually takes the CIO strategy and says, yes, we can execute your strategy. And they'll come back with a new architecture, and that architecture is absolutely homogenized. It's got that logo of that vendor all the way through. In every box, it must be a particular vendor in order to deliver that strategy. And in the process of that happening, what you found is the CIO sort of lost control of their strategy and lost control of their ability to execute it. Now it's totally relying on a singular vendor. I think SaaS came along and CPaaS came along and gave them the opportunity to now pick best of breed. And you only need to look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant and quickly realize that if you want to have a CCaaS solution and a UCaaS solution and an AI solution, there's not one player that is the best in class in every one of those categories. So they're actually forced to pick best of breed, and they want to do the mix and match. And the one thing CIOs have learned is that's not easy. Making a change is usually not easy. They want to try and pick it once and get it right because they feel like they may be caught or trapped in that particular solution. What Maestro actually does, it provides freedom of choice for the CIOs, because we've already got all those integrations built into the bandwidth platform. All the Gartner either leaders or challengers, 100% of them are bandwidth customers. They're built on top of the bandwidth platform. So those integrations are already pre-done. And what we've done is we've created a Maestro, we built Maestro around it to allow a CIO to make the decision on any one of those players. If they want to mix and match, someone on the UC side or the UCaaS side and mix it with someone on the CCaaS side or the CC side, they can do that. And they can add in their own AI solution. And if they don't work out, they can make a change easily. They're not embedded in this tight integration that they can't move out of. They don't have to pick a winner 3 years in advance. I mean, you only take a look at AI. If you were going back to, I think about Enterprise Connect a year ago. Enterprise Connect a year ago, ChatGPT had just been launched or at least made, big announcements around it probably about 3-4 months prior to Enterprise Connect. Prior to that day, every CCaaS player had their own AI strategy. There were a lot of different AI strategies. The minute that was announced, everyone dropped theirs, and ChatGPT became the word du jour in Enterprise Connect. That may sound that we're a very agile group, but to the CIO, that's a bit of a nightmare, right? They have to change a lot of things. They have to move things around. What Maestro allowed them to do is take advantage of all those integrations, allowed them to future-proof their future decisions. If they made a choice that choice changed, they can move from on-prem to any other cloud player and make that migration de-risked. They can move from cloud to cloud, and Maestro facilitated that. And it was so innovative that you actually saw a carrier or a CPaaS player win an award at Enterprise Connect, which I don't think we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, it definitely was an innovative product, and I'm looking forward to what Lauren has to say on the panel, because you definitely do take an innovative approach to it, because most of the vendors are, you have to have everything I offer, and large companies don't want that. So, so bandwidth does provide a nice alternative.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and it's not that large companies decided that they didn't want it today. It's because they lived through that. They lived through that in the 90s. We saw what happened in the 90s, right? You were locked in this homogeneous sort of deployments, and you wanted them so that you can have a consistent experience. SaaS came along, allowed it to be global. Now they want that consistent experience on a global basis, but they can't wait for the roadmap, because now you default to the roadmap of that homogeneous sort of provider. And I think they've tasted now the freedom of being able to use other players, and I don't think they want to go back. And I think that's the unique thing about bandwidth. It's not a walled garden CPaaS approach. It's an open approach. If they want to introduce a new AI player, then they simply ask the AI player to integrate into the bandwidth Maestro, and they get access to all the other players and CCaaS and UCaaS participants, and they see incredible value in that.
Great. Well,
speaking of AI, because I imagine Enterprise Connect there's going to be AI everywhere. I think on Monday I'm doing the Microsoft and Copilot session, and then Brent Kelly and I on Wednesday are going to look at the 4 different Google and Cisco and Microsoft and Zoom. But Anthony, from your perspective, how are you innovating with AI for the bandwidth business, I guess, both for your business and also for the customers? I know you talked about being able to plug into the bandwidth framework, but maybe kind of drill down on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, we do it in two ways. Firstly, we noticed the value of AI in early 2022, late 2021, and we kept a really strong eye on it into, okay, how do we utilize it? And we were looking at it from how do we utilize it in the market? And we quickly realized that the first people who should utilize it is ourselves. So we utilize it to help our customers with our customer support, being able to self-serve tickets, being able to give us insights that we predominantly see. If you think about this particular space, one of the notorious things about the telco side of the business is lack of visibility on things. And what we did is we started to expose that visibility. And what we found is our customers became our partners because they had visibility into how the network actually worked, that they had their own innovative ideas, and we allowed them to bring that to the table. As a function of doing that, we used AI to provide some of the insights. Now, it was early stage AI, granted, but it just gets more sophisticated over time. We think there's a long way to go there. The other thing we realized is you couldn't pick a winner if you wanted to, right? Once again, ChatGPT proved that out. And it's not as if it's been ChatGPT and that's it. You're seeing a lot of players come to the market. And what we found is, let's not be the player to try and profess who the winner is going to be. Let's enable each of the AI platforms and let the market decide. And that's what Maestro is about too. It's an enabler to AI, enabler to how it functions, and the market will decide whether which AI offering is better for maybe your vertical or for your solution, because that's the thing. I think it's so flexible and learns so quickly that trying to pick a winner is going to be super difficult. It might be great. One AI type might be fantastic in the healthcare industry, but may not be so good in the financial industry, or it may not be so good in the retail. And that's what we're seeing. So for us to have the hubris of being able to pick a winner, I think is folly. We've seen that time and time again. So why not enable it so that a CIO can quickly pivot if they so choose, or an AI entrant could come into the market pretty quickly and get access to a set of customers and CIOs in quick fashion and see if their stuff really works.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the right approach, because as you say, like almost week over week, somebody is saying now we can do this better, and I think a lot of people are looking at, well, how do you use the combination of these AI models, right? Which could be an integration nightmare, but if it's already been done, for me, then I can tap into all that power very quickly. So that's, I think, a fascinating approach.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you will find that usually technologies or vendors or algorithms find a lane. They find a swim lane. That swim lane could be a vertical, right? That swim lane could be a region. That swim lane could be a country. And that's what you tend to do. And anyone who runs a business usually takes the cues from their customers, or at least if they're good listeners, and then they double down on those particular areas to make sure they service that lane really well. And then they hope that they can expand that lane to adjacent lanes. In the beginning, in its infancy, you always find that these guys pick a lane, and because those who focus have a higher probability of success. So naturally, you find those lanes emerge. So I'd be surprised if there's one AI winner right across the board. I mean, it'll be pretty rare. The only time those winners like that happen is when they're aided by government assistance. They're regulated, and that's where you end up with one or two or three players. You can ask us. We see that all the time.
Yeah, no, I imagine you do. But it's certainly going to be fascinating to see all the AI announcements at Enterprise Connect. Yeah. David, is there a question that we haven't asked of Anthony yet, and that you wanted to inquire about?
Sure. Actually, to get off of the topic of AI, I love talking about AI, but this is a completely human-based question. A bandwidth leans into and leads with human-based support, and that makes it makes sense to me, because this could be a complicated journey for a customer. A customer could use some hand-holding. So the fact that you've always kind of been known for the great human-based customer support makes sense to me. And even if you go to your website, there's talk to an expert buttons everywhere, not watch this video tutorial, read this PDF guide, talk to an expert. So my question is, how are you possibly able to keep this up? Do you have an expert farm somewhere that you're breeding these experts and growing them to sit and answer questions?
It's a great question. I really think we do have a little bit of an expert farm. I mean, you come into the company and you learn about the industry really quickly, and there are people, the attitude is so positive that there's a lot of mentoring that goes on. So people learn the space very, very quickly, but they also learn that the customer's at the center of it. If you don't have that attitude, it's really tough. You've got to love your customer. You really do. Sometimes it's really tough. Let's be honest, but you have to know that they're coming from a place of, when they're calling your support, either they're calling your support because they're in a place where they need an answer that they can't solve on their own. They're doing it because they're not getting something from an existing vendor, and sometimes they're asking you for an independent view, or they're your customer and something's happened and they're usually under the pump. So when someone's under the pump, sometimes they're not their best selves. So you need to be able to at least empathize with what they're going through. We have this natural, well, I must say, everyone behind me, the whole company behind me, has this natural proclivity to assume that the customer needs your help, otherwise they wouldn't be calling. We dive in and sort it out. In that process, they quickly work out that we know our stuff. One thing about our CPaaS, if you look at bandwidth CPaaS versus some of the other players, is we're not a mile wide and an inch deep. We stay focused on bi-directional real-time communications and all aspects of it. So we go deep. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so good at the regulatory elements. And when you're learning the regulatory, some of these issues that customers face are not always technical. Sometimes it's a tax issue or a compliance issue or a regulatory issue that might be federal, state, or local. You start to peel that onion, you get really good at it. You need to speak to a person sometimes, and that human element doesn't need to be there all the time, but when it's there, it's always there. We'll white glove customers through issues. Some of our biggest wins have been because some of our customers haven't been able to reach people, and once you reach someone, you need to reach someone who can actually have an influence. The other part of having an influence for our customer support team is we own the network. So not only can they identify where the problem is, because you're talking to the owner of the network, we can make changes, or because you're an owner, you can speak the same language as the other party, which might be another carrier. Let's assume that it might be traffic that's traversing another country or continent. We know that we speak the language. They're compatriots. They know us because we're a partner of theirs in some way, shape, or form, and we can help them resolve their issue, even if it's not an issue that we have a direct oversight to. So I think our people are a big part of it, David. I think it's a good question, but it's the attitude more than the person themselves. Okay, that attitude is ingrained, and we do it 24/7, 365. I can give you examples where I've received calls from previous employers in literally late in the evening, and they would ask a question because they got themselves into an issue where something may not be turned up. And my response usually to them is, give me 10 minutes and I'll have someone talk to you. Whereas if I was at some of my previous places, I would say, give me 24 hours. That's how I've been indoctrinated, right? I know I can reach someone in a short period of time that could provide value or assistance in that short period of time. And it's amazing the confidence it gives you when you're getting someone coming in under duress. And so, yeah, I think that's attitude, and it permeates the building.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
Anthony, I was going to ask you, I was looking at the Enterprise Connect show floor, and it's packed again this year. But I noticed one of the largest booths is the bandwidth booth. And so clearly you have a message to deliver to the folks attending Enterprise Connect. And I'm just curious what it is this year.
Well, it's a good question. I didn't realize the booth size was of significance. I think we've stayed pretty consistent at Enterprise Connect, but I'm glad it's the case. I mean, for me, I'd like to encourage enterprises to take command of their enterprise, really, and their enterprise communications. And you know, I think there's more often than not, enterprise CTOs and CIOs don't feel like that they can fully own their communications or their voice or their messaging or their emergency services. I mean, I'm here to tell you, and Badman's here to tell you that you can, and you can probably do it more efficiently. You can probably do it more effectively. You can probably create a more consistent experience for your customer base, and you probably do it more cost effectively as well. And we lived through 2023, which was a cost-effective year for a lot of enterprises. I don't see that changing in 2024. So that would be a key message. The other thing I do know about our booth is I looked at its location, and it's in the middle of, I think, 3 of our customers, of the many customers we have. It's in the middle of whether it's Ring Central, WebEx, and Microsoft. So we're slap bang in the middle. So yeah, you can always go in and ask those guys how we're performing on their behalf. So I look forward to Enterprise Connect. Should be a good show.
Me too.
Well, that's great, Anthony. I think I do believe that it's booth 1719. That's at least what the Enterprise Connect site said. So hopefully that's accurate if anybody's tracking down the bandwidth booth at Enterprise Connect in, I guess, 2 weeks, right? So
Wow.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time, Anthony. I look forward to seeing you and all of the BCStrategies experts in person in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms in just under 2 weeks. So thank you very much for your time.
Likewise.
Thanks, Anthony.
Look forward to seeing you guys.
Thanks. This is
Thanks.
fun.
Bye.